Welcome to the Psychology Hour, and with the recent release of a Netflix docuseries on the infamous Ashley Madison hack, which exposed millions of cheaters, we're here to explore what really does count as cheating, different types of infidelity, and whether relationships can truly recover from such breaches of trust. Joining us in studio, we've got the fantastic Dr. Thoraiya, clinical psychologist from the Human Relations Institute and Clinic. How are you?
I'm well, Helen. How are you?
I'm well. You always bring a smile to my face for being here, but also because you often bring cookies. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Let's have a little listen to this. This is from the trailer of the Ashley Madison docuseries, Sex, Lies and Scandal.
I loved being a dad. I loved my wife. It was a beautiful marriage, but it was also just like monotonous. I remember seeing an advertisement, life is short, have an affair. I was like, that sounds intriguing.
Spoiler alert, didn't end well for that guy at all. For those who aren't aware, the Ashley Madison scandal revealed the factual names, addresses, phone numbers of people who had signed up to that website with the sole intention of being unfaithful. So, Dr. Thoraiya, let's start with the basics. To your mind, as a psychologist, what do you think constitutes infidelity in a relationship?
So it's quite a controversial definition, I would say.
As in yours?
As in mine.
Okay.
Yes.
I love it already.
I would definitely, from my opinion as a psychologist, after working with so many different couples, I think that anything that you would hide from your partner is considered cheating on some level.
100% agree. 100%. And that's going to be so personal to an individual or even to a couple, because you can see couples interact and I'd be like, oh, he's being very flirtatious with that woman that's not his wife, but his wife's there and that's clearly okay.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's not just in terms of emotions or sexual or anything like that, but it could even be financial. So financial infidelity. It's that when you're keeping finances away from your partner or you are maneuvering and manipulating finances against your partner. So the reason why I use the statement of anything you keep away from your partner, because there's a sense of betrayal that comes with that, with that hiding.
So we've touched on one there in terms of financial infidelity, but are there different types that people might experience? You know, emotional and physical obviously come to mind. How do they differ in terms of how people perceive them as cheating?
Well, interestingly enough, usually women find it very hard to forgive emotional infidelity from their partners, whereas men tend to have difficulty forgiving physical or sexual infidelity. And so that shows us what is quite important to us on many different levels, even from an evolutionary perspective, because socially and evolutionarily, women are usually socialized and culturally believed to be the nurturers, the ones that create connection, the ones that keep the family together. And so our emotional identity is really part of who we are as individuals, whereas men are kind of socialized to believe that, you know, they are the ones with the genes that get passed down. And so their manhood is very much attached to that.
And therefore particularly threatened.
Correct.
If their partner is spending time in that way with somebody else. Okay, so which brings me to think about this digital age. You know, where does infidelity begin? Because, you know, online flirting, emotional connections, liking someone's photo on Instagram. Have you had people come to clinic saying this is social media cheating?
Yes, I have. And I think that there's a line that we need to be careful of, because whether or not, you know, you flirt with somebody, I mean, this is the reality of life, is that we enjoy that external validation. As human beings, we enjoy it. And if we're married or not, you know, somebody says, oh, you look great today, or they give us a little bit of special attention. Everybody enjoys that. So to think to yourself or about your partner that you will never experience, or they will never experience somebody giving them extra attention that you may not want them to have is unrealistic. Or that your partner hasn't fantasized about somebody else in their life. Of course, that's unrealistic. But the reality is that engagement is whether or not we are engaging with that behavior as well. So sometimes we might have a person actually engage with us, but we're not reciprocating that engagement. That wouldn't necessarily be some form of infidelity.
And then come back to your initial piece of, if you have that interaction, this so-called flirtation, that frisson of a message or a like, and you are secretive about it, and it starts to build and think, oh, actually, I'd rather spend more time on my phone chatting to this person than I would do with my partner who's sitting next to me, or I'm going to put my phone away every time it buzzes because Okay, which we're going to touch on because I've had a message talking about phones. Dr. Thoraiya with us today. By the way, you can hop on over to, we didn't put it on the Dubai AI account, but you can look on my Instagram, which is just _Helen Farmer _ and have you say in a poll, which is, do you think couples can come back after cheating? Would love to get your take on that. We're going to talk about who is cheating and what motivates that as well. Are there any kind of common patterns that Dr. Thoraiya is seeing with individuals that come into clinic, and of course the couples that she works with as well? And of course, if you've got any questions, do reach out on 4001. Dee is asking, is cheating always the fault of the cheater, or are there any excuses that are valid? I don't know. We'll find out. Oof, it's hotting up on the text line. Dr. Thoraiya is in the studio for your psychology hour, and we're talking infidelity. Now, I meant to check this during the break, but I was too busy gossiping with Dr. Thoraiya and eating a cookie, so I'm going to check it right now. I put up a story on my Instagram earlier, which was a bit of a poll saying, can a couple come back after infidelity? Yes, says 48%. No, says 52%. Well, we're going to explore that a little bit further after past, but I'm curious to get your take, Thoraiya. Tell us a little bit about what typically motivates someone to be unfaithful in their relationship. Are there any common patterns, any reasons that you're seeing in practice?
So a lot of research has actually shown the 8 most common reasons why, but there are actually quite a few reasons even after that. So it's not...
Can we go through the 8?
Oh, sure. If I can remember all of them.
Is this a test? I'm so sorry.
It's okay. So definitely the first one that I can remember is retaliation. So if somebody tends to cheat on me, then I will cheat on them as a way of getting back at them, right? Then we have low in commitment. So if a person is not very committed to the relationship, then they tend to cheat on their partner. Low in self-esteem. So if I'm looking for external validation, if I'm always looking for somebody to make me feel better, then that's definitely something that I might tend to, engage in extra, let's say, marital activities. And then we have neglect. So if you're feeling a sense of neglect in the relationship, then definitely you're going to want to look for that attention and that love elsewhere. You have, of course, that physical and
the desire
factor. The physical and sexual intimacy within the relationship, absolutely, that's there. Where am I at?
Situational factors.
Yes. So circumstantial.
Being on holiday, few too many pukas, being friends with other people who've had affairs.
That tends to make it okay.
Normalize it in your social circle.
Yes, you normalize it, and you also don't feel that sense of social accountability, which is very important for us, because sometimes we need somebody to be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Versus, hey, that's okay.
Yeah, me too.
Right, exactly.
The sense check.
Or you just started?
Yeah, we've been doing this for years. Variety as well. What about male versus female motivations?
So women tend to, again, not all women, but women tend to be more emotionally connected to extramarital affairs, whereas men tend to go for the physical nature. So if women feel a sense of emotional neglect and don't feel that connection to their partner, they tend to look elsewhere. And that usually develops in the form of friendship first. So it usually has a friendship factor, but then it develops into something else. Whereas the purpose for men is usually a physical connection.
Let's go to the text line. Dee is asking, is cheating always the fault of the cheater? Are cheaters' excuses ever valid? Does it take 2 to tango, or does it take more than that?
So, there's so much research out there on couples and infidelity. And one of my favorite people, like yours, is Dr. Esther Perel.
Love her.
And she talks about something that I think in the beginning was so controversial for so many people, because it feels so horrible to be cheated on. But when you look at it, it's not, there's not one person to blame. And in general, in psychology, we don't like to use the word blame because it's not anybody's fault, but people are responsible. And it's not one person's responsibility, because in general, there's a very small statistic of individuals who truly are solely responsible, where the partner does absolutely everything to make them happy, but then, they're just cheating for the sake of cheating because they can, and they enjoy the manipulative factor. Whereas mostly with most couples, what we notice, especially when we're doing couples therapy after after there is infidelity, we realize that the relationship has been breaking down for a very long time, and this is only a symptom and a consequence of the breakdown of the relationship to begin with. So there is responsibility on both parties, and nobody really likes to hear that in the moment of finding infidelity out.
Because presumably, if you are the one that's been cheated on, it's very easy and it's a total protective mechanism to go, well, he did the cheating, or
Correct.
she's the one that strayed, so I'm the innocent party.
Right.
I'm the victim. Which, I mean, I think that's very, very, very understandable in that moment. But I guess one of the many qualities of therapy is sitting down and go, okay, this happened,
Right.
but let's look back over the years, and maybe it was, variety or circumstance or neglect or low self-esteem that could have been building for years and years, and this is where it's got to that point. But people don't want to hear that.
No, they don't, and sometimes they get very aggressive in session when they hear that from the therapist. Is that this is the reality? We have to think of how the relationship broke down, and in the rare case, I'm not referring to the rare cases, but in most of the cases when the relationship has been breaking down for quite some time, either the person's not paying attention to the other person, or there is physical intimacy that's no longer there.
So yeah, can we talk about warning signs that someone might be on the verge of cheating, or how can couples start to address things before they escalate?
I always talk about the idea of effective communication, and most people will say things like, well, we communicate all the time. I say, yes, but is it effective? Is the communication effective? Because if you're communicating through silent treatments, or through yelling and screaming, or through name calling, this is not effective communication, which means you're not really going anywhere. You're just talking for the sake of talking. But the reality is that when you look at these relationships, you'll notice that one person will start to move away, or one person will start to be either a little bit more on their phone, or they might be more isolated at home. They might engage in other activities with people that they wouldn't normally engage in. They might stay at the office a little bit longer than they usually do. I mean, basically what's happening is they're creating distance within the relationship itself. And this is one of the key factors, because as soon as you start to realize that, okay, we started off pretty close and then slowly we're starting to fall apart or spread apart from each other physically, even emotionally, everything. We're not communicating. We're not having conversations. We're not discussing what's working, what's not working. What am I doing that's making this relationship better? What am I doing that's actually not helping out this relationship? Like, what would you like to see increase in this relationship? What would you like to see that change? And what's interesting is ever since we are kids, we're constantly evaluated. We're evaluated at school. We're evaluated in high school. We're evaluated in university, at work. We're evaluated everywhere in our life. Yet we do not bother to take a moment and evaluate our relationship.
Oh, that's a truth bomb. I mean, to be truthful, when my husband and I go out for dinner, it often just turns into an airing of grievances, where it's like, here's some feedback, darling.
Positive, though.
Positive.
Yes.
Okay.
And constructive.
We'll try and do it. We'll try and do a bit more balance next time we go out for dinner. We've got Dr. Thoraiya with us today, clinical psychologist. If you want to have your say on infidelity, we'd love to hear from you. You can be anonymous on 4001. We're going to be talking about the role of forgiveness. Can you come back to a happy relationship after infidelity? And we're hearing from one woman and her story of being cheated on. She's even gone on to write books about how to heal a broken heart, moving on after her marriage. The text lines are open. 4001 is the SMS. The ARN Play app, of course, there for you too. And the WhatsApp, which is 04871 5500. That same number is the phone line if you do fancy a chat with me and Dr. T. We're also, WhatsApp is 04871 5500. Don't forget to put your name on it. If you've got any questions for Dr. T, you can be anonymous. Exploring the issues surrounding infidelity now with Dr. Thoraiya from the Human Relations Institute and Clinic. There is a new series on Netflix that's following the infamous Ashley Madison hack. Basically, a website was hacked, a website that was famed for facilitating affairs, and millions of cheaters were exposed with their real-life information. We've got questions coming in on the text line, on social as well. So we've been talking about warning signs. We've talked about motivations as well. I wanted to know if it is possible to rebuild trust after infidelity. You know, what steps do couples need to begin what must be a very, very difficult process?
Well, it's definitely possible for couples to regain trust, rebuild trust, and work together to actually establish a better relationship than the relationship that they had. Because this is where honest conversations can be had as to what's been going well and what hasn't been going well and what needs to change. So What we have seen, though, both in clinic and in the research, is that more often than not, if it's the male that cheats, the tendency can be for the prevalence is higher for people to continue in the relationship. But if it's the woman that cheats, the prevalence is actually a little bit lower.
Interesting.
Right.
That's super interesting. I don't know why.
Well, I think a big part of it has to do with how we socialize men and how we socialize them to have a higher ego, a sense of pride, and to not accept anything below, quote unquote, what they would accept as manly about themselves.
Ego. Interesting. Does it matter how an affair is found out, exposed, communicated?
Yes.
Because that is the Ashley Madison hack kind of revealed about this kind of secret lives, the secrecy, the thrill, forbidden, how, the psychology of cheating. How important is it if someone who has been unfaithful comes forward and said, I have done this has happened, versus them being coerced into telling or indeed found out in terms of the recovery of that relationship?
It makes a very big difference. So, if I'm cheating on my partner and I go and I actually admit that to my partner and I say, listen, this is what I did, I'm very sorry, this and that, then I'm taking accountability and responsibility for my behavior, and I'm showing them that I'm trying to rebuild by being extremely honest, versus my partner finds out that this is happening and then either A, I initially deny it until I can't and I crack, or B, even worse, which is sometimes what we realize, is that the person who I'm cheating with is a person who's close to my partner. And then that really makes it very difficult to rebuild trust. That could be like a best friend. It could be a partner at work. It could be something like that. So the context around the infidelity is very important, but taking accountability is by far the most important factor when it comes to
repair and moving.
And the strength of the repair. Yeah.
Okay. Questions for Dr. Thoraiya coming in on 4001. She actually messaged me on Facebook, Instagram earlier saying, I see a lot of posts about affairs and cheating and it makes me nervous. I don't think my husband has ever cheated, or at least that I know of. Am I very naive in thinking that there are men that do not cheat out there? No,
there are men that don't cheat the same way there are women that don't cheat as well, because what we're finding is that the statistics are very similar. Interestingly enough, it's the age that makes the difference. So women tend to cheat a little bit more than men do between 20 and 29, and men tend to cheat more between 30 and 39. So I guess you got to wait until after 40 to get married.
We're in the safe space. No, Chi, you're not naive at all. It's just that, people don't post on Facebook to say, oh, I've got a really, loving partner. Because people go, good for you. Good for you. We'd love to take questions, hear your stories as well. Let's have a listen now to Ms. Go, mother, a writer of poetry book. It's called 12 Years Beyond Love and Despair, and A to Z tips on how to heal a broken heart. She's worked in TV, worked in media, and became an author to try and find the courage to be selfless and move on for what turned out to be a very difficult marriage.
I had a very painful experience in my 12 years of marriage. My husband cheated on me not only once but twice. I chose to forgive him on the first time for the sake of our child, and on the second time, I questioned myself if there is something wrong with me, even though I believe I was a very good and genuine wife for him. And during that time, I even had an emotional breakdown that caused me depression and anxiety. Later, I have realized that I need to recover and work on for myself. Overcoming the trauma of infidelity may take a long time, and experiencing the roller coaster of emotions, it's hard. Really, really hard. Moving on stage is difficult at first, but time goes by, I conquer these and focus with my daughter and be a better person by engaging myself into different activities enthusiastically. The person you love or who loves you should know what you really feel in the relationship before it breaks apart, hurting both of you. Cheating isn't an accident, it's a choice.
Two things I want to ask you about that. Ms. Go said the first time her husband was unfaithful, she stayed for the sake of the child. I just said to you off air, I don't mind saying on air, they're in a completely different country, about a situation my best friend has come to learn of. And the question is, we've got young children. he says it's a one-off. He, has made assurances that is never going to happen again. Do we stay together for the sake of the children, even though she has lost a huge amount of trust? Something, obviously, you've got absolutely no way of knowing what you would do in that situation. You've got, you couldn't possibly. What I keep on coming back to, and I recommend every woman, and maybe a few men, if you haven't read Glennon Doyle's book Untamed. Have you read it yet, Dr. Thoraiya?
I don't think so.
Oh, it's really interesting. So she was a bit of a kind of a wholesome American, Christian influencer, family and faith, and and wrote a book about this, and then found out that her husband was cheating. And her point was, we're not happy in this marriage. He has been unfaithful. We're saying we're staying together for the 3 children, but what example are we setting to our children about what love is and what trust is and what communication is if we're actually deeply unhappy? And, I'm paranoid that he is going to be unfaithful again. So I keep on thinking about that. Do you have couples that come to you at crossroads saying, someone has been unfaithful, but before this, we've got a life here, we've got a home, we've built a family, and do we say goodbye to all of that because of what's happened?
Well, no, I don't think it's important to say goodbye after you've built something, if both of you are willing to work on it in an honest and conscious and intentional manner. However, when we say, and I hear this a lot from the couples that I work with, we're staying for the sake of the children. And what people don't realize, and this is what I hear countless times from adults that come to see me, is I wish my parents divorced. I wish my parents separated, because the conflict, the tumultuous nature of the house, the tension was just so much that I kept living in hypervigilance, and I kept living in anxiety and chaos, that's all I know how to live in now. And so what parents don't understand is that you are not doing this for the sake of the children. You're saying that because that's what you want to believe. But the reality is that you're doing this for your own sake, because you don't want to disturb your own pot, which is understandable, because something like this destroys your world in so many different ways because of the betrayal.
This is the second thing I wanted to ask you about, from what Ms. Go was saying there about the effect it had on her mental health, saying she fell into a depression. And I wanted to ask you about what can happen, if you have got this shock betrayal or this drip, drip, drip effect of being in an unhappy marriage that does result in infidelity. What can be the mental health fallout from that?
I mean, there's so much, but moving away from the clinically diagnosed, depression, anxiety, and things like that, but you have lowered self-esteem, low self-worth, low self-value, low confidence, body image issues, body issues in general, like thinking that you're not worthy in terms of what you look like, starting to doubt yourself, doubting your partner. Sometimes people start to develop more paranoia than they ever have before. They start to feel jealous more than they ever did before, or even if they have before. So they start to almost live a completely different identity from what they were used to prior to finding out.
Dr. Thoraiya is with us today. It's your last chance to send any questions or comments in for our psychology hour as we look at infidelity. We've had a message here saying, how can you prove you're not cheating? Recently changed my Facebook profile photo, and it started a whole thing about trust. We're going to be unpacking that a little bit. We've had messages coming in about relationships changing as well. So if you do have any questions or anything we can help you out, we just want to have your say, please do reach out, and you can, as many of the listeners have been saying today, no name please, anonymous, that's absolutely fine, on 4001 on the app and the WhatsApp too, which is 04871 5500. Clinical psychologist Dr. Thoraiya from the Human Relations Institute and Clinic is in the studio. We are talking about cheating. There is a new docuseries on Netflix that looks at the Ashley Madison scandal. We're talking about warning signs, about repair, communication. And listeners been in touch anonymously, and as we always say, don't worry about leaving your name off. I know a lot of what we talk about is personal and private. We just want to make sure you've got a sounding board or place to come for some advice should you need it. So Thoraiya, a message here saying, my partner has changed a lot, physically and character-wise. I guess it's part of growing up, and everyone changes with time. These changes have started to push me away. It's been over 2 years that I've felt this way. I do love my partner, but these changes have affected my attraction to them, and ultimately it's not doing our relationship any favours. My question is, when does personal choice and compromise start? Her decisions to change physically are completely her choice, and I have no say over that. But at what point does it become my right as a partner to say something? It's really pushing me away.
Well, I think when we talk about the partner's rights, you always have a right to say something. What you don't have a right to is expect that people are going to do exactly what you want just because that's what you're saying. Now, it is important that you, again, going back to that effective communication piece, effectively communicate how this is making you feel. Now, also, you want to kind of look at what else is happening other than the looks, the physical attraction that exists in your partner that you truly admire, that you love, that you're attracted to. Because, even if your partner wasn't changing in terms of their looks in a specific way.
I mean, it's impossible to know from this message. We don't know if, she's gone on a fitness,
Right.
slant and is, living life and looking amazing, or, maybe she's struggling with weight
Correct.
and that is be having some knock-on effect on
Correct.
the mental side and personality side.
Right.
Either of those.
Yes, either of them. In
Or
the end,
completely something different.
exactly. So yes, you're right. So essentially what you want to look at is what else is there that you love about your partner, because our looks change and they fade and they adjust and they shift in so many different ways as we get older. Correct. We are more than just what we look like. However, your right as a partner is to communicate. And it's okay to say, you know what, I'm starting to feel a little bit, blank about whatever is happening here, or this is kind of making me, maybe making me worried about what's going on, either health-wise, depending on which way the person is going, or, in terms of
Connection
and so on and so forth. So that communication piece is definitely your right to do as a partner. I think it's important for you to have an open and vulnerable conversation with your partner about it, and then see where that goes.
Dr. Thoraiya, we've got just a minute left. What do you feel like we haven't touched on today that you feel like is a really valuable part of the conversation around infidelity and cheating?
I think if I had to say something to all the couples that are out there, I'd say constantly go back and evaluate. Talk to each other. What's working, what isn't, because this kind of evaluative feedback can be so powerful. I'm not saying...
How do you phrase it, though?
But it doesn't have to be like, let's sit down and have an evaluation form and feedback form about what's going on. But it's just, every once in a while, doesn't even have to be on a weekly basis. Just once in a while, just sit down and be like, how am I doing? Mm-hmm. How are you doing? How are we doing? What's working, what isn't? And I don't know how you want to phrase it, because it all depends on the partner that you have and how you guys usually communicate. Make it light. It doesn't have to be heavy. It doesn't have to be boring. Try to make it interesting, but at the same time, be honest, because the more honest these conversations are, the more likely people, yes, might get hurt in the moment, but they will see that the intention here is to stay together, to stay in this committed relationship that you both have chosen to engage in.
Dr. Thoraiya, thank you so, so much. And to those of you who are thinking, do you know what, some couples therapy would be very useful, Dr. Thoraiya is available at the Human Relations Institute and Clinic, as is the team there. Thank you so, so much. And I'm fascinated to get your take on this docuseries. We will catch up on that very soon.